This is your world news broadcast. To the headlines. South Lebanon is under heavy Zionist occupation fire again. More casualties, more people fleeing. Hezbollah insists it's sticking to the ceasefire, but warns it won't give up its right to resist. Also on news tonight, Iran shuts the Strait of Hormuz and threatens to stop Middle East energy shipments, saying the understanding is at risk. Pakistan, meanwhile, announces technical talks tomorrow, and Switzerland offers a confidential venue. Protesters took to the streets in Geneva, in Switzerland, calling for the release of Sahrawi political prisoners. International groups are reaffirming their support for the Sahrawi people's fight for independence. And Algeria is off the FATF grey list. The global financial watchdog praised its reforms. Niger is backing joint energy projects, and Algerian pipeline gas to Europe is up so far this year. Welcome back. At least 36 people were killed and dozens more wounded in Zionist shelling across Lebanon on Saturday. The Lebanese Civil Defense reported 16 bodies recovered, including a soldier, and 12 wounded after heavy raids on Nabatia. One soldier later died of wounds in Marjayun, while 2 others were killed in strikes on Dawair and Zahrani. In South Lebanon, 12 people were killed, including 2 girls and 2 women, with 17 wounded in strikes on the Tyre district. 5 others were killed in the Bekaa Valley. The health ministry said 83 were killed and 141 wounded in 24 hours, bringing the overall toll since March 2nd to 4,057 killed and over 12,100 wounded. Hezbollah said it remained committed to the ceasefire agreement while reaffirming its determination to resist any Israeli occupation attempt to seize Lebanese territory. In a statement, the group said it had the right to respond to occupation attacks, citing strikes on Zionist forces that advanced near Nabatia in southern Lebanon overnight. Washington had announced on Friday a new truce between the two sides, but the Israeli occupation forces later carried out deadly strikes in several areas of Lebanon. Southern Lebanon saw a mass exodus Saturday from Tyre and Bijbil towards Sidon and Beirut after the heaviest Zionist airstrikes since the U.S.-Iranian deal. The new displacement echoes the massive waves that swept the south in recent months, forcing over 1 million people from their homes. Safin Kantar has more.
A new wave of displacement is underway in Beirut's southern suburbs following renewed Zionist airstrikes over the past hours. The attacks, which reportedly killed dozens of people, most of them from southern Lebanon, have reignited fear and uncertainty among residents, prompting many families to leave their homes in search of safer areas. The latest escalation has once again forced civilians onto the roads, adding the hardship of communities that have already endured repeated cycles of displacement since the start of the conflict.
We left 3 days ago. It's been 3 days now. And now they started threatening, and the shelling is expanding and getting closer little by little. You know, we have families and children with us, and people get scared. So we want to make sure the children are safe, and God willing, we will return.
Despite the renewed bombardment, many residents insist they remain determined to return to their homes, regardless of how many times they are forced to flee.
No one trusts them, you know what I mean. We want it to be a national agreement. First, the Israeli forces must withdraw, and a national agreement can happen. But for now, I call on all Lebanese people, the state, and all the security forces for us all to stand united as one. The enemy must withdraw from Lebanese territories, and then there would be negotiations and a diplomatic solution can be reached.
The escalation is being described as the most intense since the ceasefire agreement covering Lebanon came into effect. As tensions continue to rise, Lebanese civilians are closely watching diplomatic efforts aimed at containing the crisis and preventing wider regional confrontation.
Still with the Middle East developments, Iran announced on Saturday the reclosure of the Strait of Hormuz, citing what it said was the United States' failure to uphold the first clause of the ceasefire agreement, alongside continued Zionist violations in Lebanon. The Khatam al-Anbiya Central Command said in a statement that the move came in response to repeated breaches of the truce in southern Lebanon. It added that this was the first step in response to the violations, warning of further measures if continued attacks persist. Caution persists in Tehran-Washington negotiations as disputes over implementation mechanisms continue, while Iran announces the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and warns against any breach of agreements. Marabel reports now.
Even as tensions flare once again around the Strait of Hormuz, diplomacy remains alive. US and Iranian delegations are set to meet on Sunday in Switzerland in a bid to advance an interim deal brokered by Pakistan and signed on Wednesday by US President Donald Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian to end their almost 4-month war. The agreement now is being tested in Lebanon, where the Zionist forces track locations across the south and the Bekaa Valley, killing dozens of people. Tehran accused the US of failing to implement the first clause of its 14-point interim deal, warning that the flow of Middle East energy would remain halted as long as the agreement, quote, was only on paper. The US military, on the other hand, pushed back against Tehran's announcement that the strait had been shut down, saying more than 17 million barrels of oil have already flowed to global markets on Saturday. As part of efforts to revive direct talks, Pakistani Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi met with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran earlier Saturday, as Iran insists it would press for a fulfillment of commitments in Switzerland, citing past failures by the other side to honor agreements. In an interview with Fox News, US Vice President J.D. Vance said he was confident the ceasefire would hold and that he had seen no evidence that the strait was closed. After these contradictory claims over the status of the Strait of Hormuz, the US president threatened in a Truth Social post to impose US tolls in the crucial waterway if a final deal with Iran isn't reached in 60 days, adding a new layer of tension ahead of Sunday's talks. Behind the official statements surrounding maritime traffic and the Zionist aggression against Lebanon, international observers are closely tracking the situation as uncertainty builds over global energy and trade routes. Still, diplomatic channels have not fully closed, with both sides leaving space, even limited, for negotiations to continue.
6 Palestinians were killed in a Zionist airstrike on Gaza Saturday. Medical sources said 5, including a couple and their 2 children, died in strikes on Gaza City. Another was killed in Beit Lahia. The government media office documented 3,338 occupation ceasefire violations since day 251 of the truce. A Saturday statement said those violations left 1,012 Palestinians dead and 3,208 wounded, 4 to 5 martyrs daily, plus at least 100 arrested. On aid, the statement said only 36% of the pledged amount entered Gaza, calling it a sign of continued collapse in commitment to the truce.
Tonight, they bombed our house in the 30th Street area near Al-Haik without any warning. Of course, this so-called ceasefire they keep talking about, there is no ceasefire. The house they hit was a civilian home. No resistance fighters or anything like that. I've never even held a weapon.
UNICEF spokesperson James Elder says that at least 256 Palestinian children have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the first phase of the ceasefire agreement took effect in October 2025. Briefing reporters in Geneva via video link from Amman, he described the death toll as absurd and devastating.
Children have been killed. Since the ceasefire was announced in October last year, 265 Palestinian children have been killed across Gaza. That is an absurd, that is a devastating figure. So during a period supposedly defined by restraint and protection, a child is killed, on average, every single day for more than 8 months.
Meanwhile, the UN Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, said 70% of Gaza's population needed adequate shelter, warning that basic services were on the verge of collapse.
These fragile gains are the bare minimum of what Palestinians need, and what we can provide, and what international law demands. They reflect movement away from a catastrophic baseline, not the fulfillment of fundamental needs. Gaza is being held together by humanitarian workarounds and Palestinian perseverance. And this is unsustainable. Civilians cannot wait for a more convenient diplomatic moment to receive the basics for survival.
Turning to other news now, the Sahrawi community organized a solidarity demonstration in Geneva in Switzerland calling for the release of the Sahrawi political prisoners. Participants erected symbolic tents and displayed photos of detainees in a show of support highlighting their situation and demanding their release. The event featured speeches on political prisoners and human rights in Western Sahara held outside international institutions in Geneva as part of ongoing solidarity actions.
We are participating during the first week of the 62nd of the UN Human Rights Council. The aim of this participation is to shed light, but also the draw of attention to the serious situation of human rights violations in the occupied part of Western Sahara, where these violations are continuously committed in the complete absence of accountability, which contributes to a climate of impunity enjoyed by the Moroccan occupying state. The objective is also to give the voice to Sahrawi people and to call on the Human Rights Council specifically and the United Nations in general, as well as the international community, to assume their responsibilities regarding these violations and crimes.
Two Spanish organizations reaffirmed their commitment to supporting Sahrawi human rights defenders and exposing violations in occupied Western Sahara. In a joint statement, they defended the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination under international law. The groups underscored increasing pressure on solidarity organizations, including intimidation campaigns, event cancellations, and pressure on those who support the Sahrawi cause.
The continued Moroccan occupation relies on a policy aimed at concealing violations and preventing information from reaching international public opinion in order to preserve Morocco's image as an economic and tourism partner. According to the annual report documenting this abuse, helps counter official narratives and sheds light on the reality of violations committed against Sahrawi civilians in Western Sahara.
The Financial Action Task Force removed Algeria from its grey list during a plenary meeting at the OECD headquarters in Paris. The decision was seen as recognition of Algeria's efforts to combat money laundering and strengthen financial transparency, following a series of reforms adopted in a short period.
This is of great importance as it will allow Algeria to improve its economic image at the global level. Being outside the grey list is very important for Algeria, especially as it is also turning toward countries in the African hinterland. Therefore, Algeria's presence on the white list is very important for our country.
Niger's Trade and Industry Minister Abdoulaye Saibo reaffirmed support for cooperation between Algeria's Naftal and Niger's Sonidep backing joint projects under their agreement. He expressed confidence in Naftal's technical capacity to meet Niger's energy needs and support development in the hydrocarbon sector. Naftal said the meeting reflected strong bilateral ties and a shared commitment to investment projects and South-South cooperation. Algeria has strengthened its presence in the European gas market since the start of the year, with pipeline exports rising for the fifth consecutive month. A report by the specialized platform Taqa said Algerian gas exports increased by 11% to Spain and 5% to Italy. It added that Algeria is leading the African gas supplier to Europe, covering around 17% of EU pipeline imports via the Medgas and Transmed pipelines, alongside higher LNG deliveries. Moving on to more regional news now. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Mohamed Ali Youssef, welcomed the signing by Libyan governing bodies of a document outlining principles of a roadmap to end the country's transitional period. A statement from the Commission praised the consensus between the House of Representatives, the Presidential Council, and the High Council of State. It said the agreement reflected a shared commitment to national security, financial stability, and Libya's territorial integrity. The head of the Africa CDC, Jean Cassia, said Africa must invest its own resources in its health sector to reduce dependence on foreign partners. He also criticized what he described as global silence over efforts to develop vaccines and treatments for Ebola, calling for increased funding to strengthen outbreak response and vaccine development.
Is also complicated. Third is public health measures to try and bring this under control.
If this outbreak was in Europe, was in the US or other continents, other places, they will already develop vaccine and medicine. For them, they don't find interest. It's not their disease. They don't find interest. They are not, it's not their people who are dying. And I think this is also a wake-up for Africans. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to say, it's time for us to really think strongly about how we can start to manufacture medicines and vaccines to respond to our needs.
The Director General of the Africa CDC warned that the current Ebola outbreak is the worst on record.
Those who are in contact list must be in isolation. We need to follow them for 21 days. If after 21 days, they are not positive, if they don't present symptoms, we lift them and we close this line. But if we have people who are in the contact list, they are not in isolation, they are in the community, they are not followed, it means there is a huge risk for what we call community transmission of the disease.
As part of preparations for their second match against Jordan, the Algerian national football team continued intensive training with a session at the Rock Chalk Park, University of Kansas. The session, led by Vladimir Petkovic, was held with a full squad in good conditions as they aim to recover from their opening defeat to Argentina and keep their qualification hopes alive. Meanwhile, FIFA has appointed a Slovenian refereeing team led by Slavko Vincic for the match scheduled on June 23rd in the San Francisco Bay Area Stadium in the second round of Group 10 of the 2026 World Cup. Two people were killed and others injured in a Russian strike on the northeastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. Local military authorities said guided aerial bombs hit residential areas, killing 2 people and injuring 9. In Zaporizhia, 9 other people were injured after more than 40 towns and villages came under heavy Russian airstrikes, damaging buildings and infrastructure, according to local authorities. Pakistani police said 7 people were killed and 3 others injured in 2 explosions near the border with Afghanistan. They said the first blast targeted a passenger van with a remotely detonated improvised explosive device, while a second device exploded as the wounded were being taken for treatment. Bolivian President Rodrigo Paz declared a nationwide state of emergency after 6 weeks of protests that paralyzed the economy. In a televised address, he said the move followed the exhaustion of dialogue efforts and agreements with groups he described as having legitimate demands, while blaming others for using violence to destabilize the country.
Bolivia showed patience, prudence, and willingness for dialogue. We sought peace until the very last moment, but after exhausting all avenues of dialogue, after reaching agreement with those who had legitimate demands, and after clearly identifying those who were using violence in an attempt to destabilize Bolivia, we have taken the decision to declare a state of emergency across the entire national territory.
The European Commission plans to impose additional tariffs on hybrid cars imported from China to protect domestic industry and close customs loopholes. According to Handelsblatt, citing EU officials and industry sources, the measure is ready for fast-track approval by member states, allowing it to take effect quickly. The report said the tariffs would target vehicles from major Chinese manufacturers, including BYD, Chery, and SAIC Motor. Prime Minister Sahrawi presided over National Artist Day ceremony Saturday at the International Conference Center, west of Algiers, honoring winners of the 2026 Ali Maashi Prize for Young Creators. The event drew government members, officials, and a cross-section of Algeria's cultural community. A statement from the Prime Minister's office said the event recognizes artists' contributions to national culture and their role as partners in preserving identity and boosting Algeria's cultural influence. For her part, Culture Minister reiterated President Tebboun's commitment to guaranteeing absolute freedom for creators and protecting their rights.
من استجداد الى المركز الدولي للمؤتمرات المعهوده هو صوره للذكرى مع سياده الوزير الاول. اذكر ان شهادات التقدير موقعه من طرف السيد رئيس الجمهوريه.
اكيد انا سعيده جدا بهذا.
I am, of course, very happy with this achievement, especially as I was awarded first place. It is both a moral and financial incentive for writers, providing them with a space through which they can express themselves and reach their audience. I would therefore like to thank the President of the Republic for creating this opportunity and giving creators the chance to be recognized. It is a true honor for them.
This award is a highly prestigious distinction and significant addition to my professional record. It is also an important recognition of musical work I've dedicated myself to over the years. I've focused particularly on Hassani music and the musical heritage of Tindouf. This award is, in many ways, a first of its kind of this musical type, and for the region it represents.
When you receive an award like this, along with such significant recognition, it motivates you to improve yourself and further develop your work. It also inspires you to dream of achieving even more distinctions in the future. For me, this is a great honor.
Well, that's all for tonight. To catch up on any part you missed or get the latest updates, you can always visit our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.